Hello, and welcome to this week's Superb Woman Sundays at 7. I'm your host, Janet Neal. I am the founder and Queen Bee at the Superb Woman Incorporated. I'm so thrilled that you're here with us tonight. We have a great show. Let me tell you a little bit about how this all came about. I started the Superb Woman with the belief that, number one, the world is a mess. Number two, that women hold the key to turning things around. And number three, women can fall into two different categories. One, those who give their power away, and two, those that don't even realize they have power to begin with. And so the Superb Woman is here to provide the resources and the tools to help women to realize how powerful they are, to help them to step back and understand who they are, what unique talents and skills and values they bring to the table, and help them to step into those and create and live a very powerful life that is for the betterment of all of us. So I have been very fortunate to be able to meet these powerful women on my path, and I've been so inspired by their stories, and I know that you will be inspired by them as well. So today's guest is no exception. I met Janice Kovach when we were both panelists, and I can't even remember what the event was, and Janice probably will be able to remind me, but Janice had a story that was just amazing to me, coming from a background that included domestic violence and being able to turn her life around. And now Janice is the mayor of Clinton, New Jersey. She was formerly the director of the Department of Women for the state of New Jersey, where we got to know each other a little bit more then. And now, very exciting, she's a candidate for Congress. So, Janice, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yes, it was a few years ago that we met. I think it was at Morris County College, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, Morris County College, that's where it was. Yeah, so Janice, like I said, your story starts off not in a typical way. So you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I got married kind of young, 23, and when I got married, it was interesting because who I had married was a couple years older than me, and as a kid, it was, I just wanted someone that was going to take care of me, someone who was going to, love me. And unfortunately, I mistook that the controlling as someone who loved me. And while I'm probably luckier than most because my abuse was strictly emotional, there was no physical abuse as part of it, it's still devastating and it's hard to accept. I realized a couple of years into my marriage that it wasn't I wasn't who I thought I was, and I had lost myself somewhere along the way. And it took the verge of a nervous breakdown to really make me see that this was not a healthy relationship. And if I was going to survive, and if my daughter was going to understand what a healthy relationship was, I needed to get out. And that's what I did. And it's been a long journey along the way. It's definitely been an eye-opening experience. I think it's helped me kind of define what's important to me and what some of the issues are that I think that I want to focus on. And it's definitely made me stronger.
Definitely. I know when you have setbacks like that, when you have emotional issues in your life, you are going to come out of it one of two ways, and you definitely are of the stronger variety.
Thank you.
So you got out of this marriage. Kudos to you for being able to have that inner strength, because that's a really difficult thing to be able to, when you've lost yourself, to be able to find something within you that's going to allow you to keep going. So what helped you there in order to kind of take that step back and re-examine things?
I think it was a couple of things. Obviously, my family is a huge part of, my network, and I was lucky enough to be able to go home to my parents and bring my daughter and kind of get myself resituated. I also had an amazing group of friends that reminded me that I was much stronger than what I thought, and my self-worth was much more than what he had let me believe for the longest time. So, it was a slow journey, and taking it day by day. I learned to celebrate the small milestones. Getting up out of bed, making lunch for my daughter, and getting myself off to work, that was a milestone. There were days when it seemed harder and other days when it wasn't. And when I didn't have to think about it, I knew that I'd actually accomplished that milestone, and was able to then set larger milestones. And, I was able to go back to college and finish my degree. I focused on my career and raising my daughter. And, through all of that, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to meet someone who eventually we got married, and I have 2 young sons with him. And, we have an amazing family. And, he's accepted me, he's accepted my daughter. And that definitely helped get to that next level and get us to where we needed to be.
That's so great. That's so great. I love how you said that you just took it, a little step at a time in those daily milestones. So that's a great message. So you were working, and how did you get involved then in politics? Because when I met you, you already were firmly ensconced in politics.
Yes. So I've always been a political junkie. I've always loved following politics. I've always been intrigued by the political process. And, my degree is in business administration, and I worked in the corporate world for a number of years before when I had my 3rd son, I decided to kind of take a break and knew that might be my opportunity for politics. So locally, there was no one running against the incumbents. And it was 3 guys who were running. And all of a sudden, we looked and there's no one challenging them. And we wound up running 3 women against the 3 men, and won 2 of the seats that first time back in 2003. So it's been 11 years now. I sat on council the first time, and I live in the town I grew up in. So for me, I've come home. My kids are going to the same school I graduated from. They'll go on to my high school. It sounds corny, but it really is kind of what makes our community so great, because so many of us come back. And to be able to give back to the community in a way that, as much as I loved working in the corporate world and working on amazing projects, being in politics, I get to see the results of the work that I do. I have a direct impact on the lives of my residents. And that in itself is probably one of the best experiences. Once I finished my first term as council, I had the opportunity to go down to the Division on Women. And that was beyond amazing. And we worked with programs that funded the domestic violence and sexual assault programs. We worked with displaced homemakers. We had a micro-business credit program. And we worked with the underserved and underrepresented women in New Jersey. And I think that was where I found my true calling around advocacy work. I love it, and even after I left the division, I continued to do a lot of advocacy work. I get phone calls from women in the programs or from the programs themselves on a regular basis, and I help however I can, because that's when I see that them make that turn that point and get to the better part of their lives. It's just absolutely amazing to know that I played a small role in it.
Definitely. And I think of you as a go-to person. If I need to find a resource in the state of New Jersey, it's like I think of you as a person to go to, because you're very connected. Can you talk a little bit about that power of being connected and connecting with others?
Sure. So, one of the things that I did when I was down in Trenton was make sure I got to know a lot of the individuals that would have a direct impact on the work that I was doing at the time. But at the same time, also understanding how government works. And, I love to meet people. I love to talk to people. And I always try to, if someone needed something, I helped them, because I knew at some point in time I would need their help as well. And as Mayor Clinton, I get phone calls from other mayors, from other electeds within the county, and they ask my opinion, or they'll ask me who they should reach out to. And we really work well together. It's a synergy. I think that's probably the key to the role that any elected needs to play. It's not, we don't live in this little fiefdom. We're all interconnected in so many ways, and to be able to do that, I think, is really the most important part of this job. And like I said, I enjoy meeting people, and I enjoy seeing the results of the work that we do.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that comes through very, very much in evidence. So the next step for you is you're running for yet another office. So tell us some more about that.
Sure. So, I don't think I ever quite planned what my next steps are going to be. They just kind of happen based on what's going on. I looked at, I love being the mayor of the town of Clinton. This is home. This will always be home for me. And like I said, I never really had the thought that I have to take the next steps, or, that there's this ladder that I have to climb. But anytime I see something that's broken or not working, my first inclination is I have to try to fix it. And I've seen what's happened in Washington, and I'm so disappointed that the gridlock and the partisanship that happens, it's so much about party that our electeds have forgotten who they're supposed to be serving. I deal with residents every single day in my role as mayor, and some of them are struggling. Some of them have true hardships, and they're trying to make do, and they're unemployed for the first time in their lives. And it's so unfortunate that Washington seems to have turned a deaf ear to that we've allowed the rhetoric to drive our policy. It's so easy to get a group of individuals angry and getting them out to vote, because you get them angry or scared about something, they come out. But we're not fixing the problems. We're not talking about jobs in the economy. We're not talking about infrastructure. We're not talking about what's impacting my backyard. We're talking about education and student loans. I have a daughter that graduated college in 2012. It took her 9 months to find a job, but 6 months after graduation, student loans kicked in. She worked a lot of part-time jobs to try to make ends meet. She's lucky that she's able to live here with us, but how many other students out there are suffering? When we look at our elementary and middle school and high school education, and what are we doing to ensure that the kids who are graduating have the right education to be able to go on to college or onto a career that they want to take? So, for me, this is about fixing a lot of broken systems and focusing on my residents. Listen, I may be a Democrat, but believe me, I've taken Democrats to task as much as I've taken Republicans to task, because the person that's not doing all they can for my community, I don't really care what political affiliation you have. I'm going to let you know you're not doing your job.
Yeah, I totally believe you. So my definition of a superb woman is someone who is comfortable in their own skin, who has taken the time to step back to understand, who they are, what their strengths, their values, etc. are, and someone who is striving to live a should-free life, who has released some shoulds in their life. So you've already talked about, there was a time in your life when you stepped back, had to, kind of forced to step back and to find out who you were. Is that the time that you started to feel comfortable in your own skin?
No, I don't think, not immediately. I think it's really probably just been the last 5 years. I've gotten to a point that I've had some extremely successful careers. I've loved all the jobs that I've had and the opportunities that I had. And I'd say the last 5 years I've gotten to the point where, I let go of negativity. I don't do anything that because someone tells me I have to do it. I do it because I'm passionate about it. When we talk about advocacy for women, one of the things that we talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk, and that's getting more women engaged. Mm-hmm. Women tend to shy away from oh, I'm not ready yet, or I don't know enough yet. Listen, when I first took over as mayor, did I know everything? Absolutely not. I now know more about water and sewer than I probably ever wanted to know. But that's the way it gets done. You know, it's most of the guys wake up one morning and say, yeah, I think I'm going to run for president this year. But women are like, oh, I'm not quite ready yet, or oh, I need to learn a little bit more. No, we need to encourage more and more women. We need to engage young women in the process, because I really hope when I'm 80 years old, I'm sitting on a beach drinking a frozen colada or something, and someone else has stepped into the role and is doing the work that I'm so passionate about.
Yep, I'm with you. I'll join you there.
Okay, good.
But that's an interesting thing that you were just talking about. I was actually surprised when you said it's just in the last 5 years, because I've known you longer than 5 years, and you certainly have always appeared like you were comfortable in your own skin. So what is it that makes you, have you always had that you'll do it anyways, even though you face the fear and do it anyways? Have you always had that attitude?
I think so. I mean, growing up, I was always trying to be out there, and trying to find something that I'm passionate about. I have to have the passion for it. If I don't have the passion for it, getting me to do it, almost impossible. That's why I don't cook anymore. I let everyone else deal with the cooking at the house. But it has to drive me. It has to light that fire where I see an injustice or something that needs to be fixed and done. And like I said, I've always kind of had it. And yes, I mean, there's a lot of times I've done something that when I first ran for council, not that I would ever admit it, but I was definitely afraid. I didn't know what I was doing. I never managed a town before. How do you actually do that? Running for mayor, it was the same thing. It's like all of a sudden now I'm going to be the one responsible for council meetings and driving agendas. I'm like, oh, that's a little scary. Okay, I think we can do this. But I'm comfortable that everything that I've done for the right reasons. May not always be politically correct, but I know that ultimately it's benefited whatever group I was looking to benefit. And to me, that's my attaboy. That's how I know I've done the right job. I can go to bed at night and not second guess any decisions I've ever made.
Wonderful. So that sounds like a should being released. Is there another should that you know that you've released in your life?
Probably worrying about, things I can't control. Anything that is outside my realm, I'm not going to get crazy over it. I'm running for Congress because I think I bring something to the table. Win or lose, I have had the right conversations during this campaign, and I won't ever look back and say I should have done this or I should have done that. I've run this absolutely the way I wanted to run it, regardless of what someone told me I should or shouldn't do.
Excellent. Well, kudos to you for doing that. Let me just take a minute to remind our viewers that if you've got a question for Janice, feel free to type it in and send it over, and we'll get that over to her as soon as we can. So let me just talk to you a little bit more about doing something that you're afraid of. So how do you, when the odds are not always stacked in your favor, but you have that passion, how do you keep going when things are not looking up?
Yeah, well, and that's a perfect example of the congressional race right now.
Well, I wasn't going to be direct about that, but
yes. Listen, I get the district that I'm in has always, not always, but tends to lean to the Republicans. But I look at it this way, that I'm focusing on issues that I know are important, and that's the driver. It's staying positive and feeling good about every single thing. Anytime someone makes a negative comment, and it's inevitable. I don't read the comments on on the blogs, because I know that they're meant to hurt. And here's the thing, honestly, I don't care what someone says about me. I think when I first announced, one of the comments, someone was telling me one of the comments said, oh, well, she's a Democrat. Nancy Pelosi's going to tell her to shut up and sit down, and she's going to do it. And then further down, someone had said, oh, well, she's a Catholic, so she's going to do what the Pope said. So I remember calling my husband. I said, just so you know, I have a direct line to the Vatican. What are you talking about? I said, Nancy Pelosi's going to tell me to shut up and sit down, and the Pope's going to tell me how to vote. You know, I don't let anything define me. Nothing about whatever I tack after my name. You know, my issues and my values are defined based on the person that I am and what's important to me. And as long as I know that ethically and morally I'm doing all the right things, there's nothing more than I can ask for than that. You know, and uphill or not, I'm going to continue the climb. And you know, who knows what next steps are? This may be a washout, but there may be something post-election that is the next step that I'm supposed to be taking. Something is there. What it is, I'm not quite sure yet. Hopefully Congress, but if not, we shall see.
Well, I very much admire your tenacity in going for what you believe in. I think that in itself is a great lesson for women. I think that for me, you are a role model of somebody who, you know, is passionate about something, and therefore they're going to act upon it. So thank you for being a role model.
Well, thank you.
So my other question then is, we don't always get to where we are by ourselves. We don't live in vacuums. So you mentioned that your family and your friends had helped you when you were younger. Who else has been of influence to you that has helped you on your path?
Oh, there's been a number of individuals, mostly women. You know, probably one of the ones that I hold most dear is her name is Allie McGarren. She was my 8th grade homeroom teacher and social studies teacher at Clinton Public, and then she was also the mayor for the town of Clinton. So I had the opportunity to know her first in a student-teacher relationship, and then when I moved back into town and she was the mayor, as a peer-to-peer. You know, and she was a mentor to me when I decided to run for office, because she was retiring and had said, you know, whatever I can do to help. And, you know, I used to have, unfortunately she passed away last January, but we used to have coffee once a month or once a week, and, you know, she'd kind of talk through. She's probably one of the only people that could make me do something even if I didn't want to, because she'd use that teacher voice on me. I'm like, oh, she's doing it again. But there's been so many different women that I've worked with. You know, you and I have done some stuff together, and from each of my interactions, I learned something. There's a number of women who are elected in state government. There are women from the Women's Political Caucus. You know, while I'm comfortable in my own skin, it's always nice to know that I still have that group standing behind me, and they will stand behind me no matter what. You know, one of my favorite quotes is Madeleine Albright said, "There's a special place in hell for women that don't support other women." And, you know, those women that are out there, and they know that, you know, they are so afraid of helping another woman, but yet for that one, there are 10 that will give you that hand out and hand up to get to where you need to be. But I don't even think I could name all the women that have really been influential and instrumental, both in my corporate career as well as in my my public career.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm totally in agreement with you that we need those role models. We need, you know, our sisters there to help us. So you are a great advocate for women. For women who are feeling that they want to get started but they don't know whether it's politics or some kind of community involvement, they're not quite sure how to do it. What suggestions would you have for them?
I think first is to kind of figure out what their passion is. Most times women get involved because of an issue. We're so passionate about issues that impact our families, our neighbors, and our friends. We are the greatest advocates, but we're not great at advocating for ourselves. So, anytime someone asks, how do I figure it out? I'm like, well, what drives you? What gets you either hot so that you want to get out there and say something, or you're just so, it's an issue that's important. And I think that's probably one of the first questions. What drives you? For some people, it will be school and education. For some people, it will be, something to do with their children. But find what that is, and test the waters too, because you may find that you think you want to get involved politically, and you can start with some of the community groups that there are out there. A lot of towns have committees that you can get appointed to, and that might be a start. But you also have to go outside your comfort zone. Too many times we stay within that box that we know, and you never quite figure out where you should be then, because you're staying in that zone. Going outside the box is probably the hardest and the scariest, but try it, see what you like. You can always finish a term and then decide to do something else, but you have to stretch out your comfort zone.
Totally agree. Totally agree. We have a question here.
Okay.
It says, what will be your primary objective when, not if, you make it to Congress? Is there a particular initiative or piece of legislature that you want to focus on right out of the gate?
I think one of the first things that's really important, New Jersey is lagging in jobs in the economy, and there's a couple of things that can be done. One is look at our crumbling infrastructure in the state of New Jersey. And Pulaski Skyway is a perfect example. They've just started working on that. 5 years ago, it had a very poor rating. I'm not sure if it was a C+ or a D+ rating. So for the last 5 years, we've put the health and public safety of every person that's traveled that bridge at risk. That has to stop. We need to focus on ensuring that the infrastructure is in place to protect the health and public safety of our residents. And whether it's in the form of aid or whether it's working with the state to ensure the Transportation Trust Fund is well funded is something that has to be done. I dare anyone to come into the town of Clinton and find a pothole. We are small, but we definitely make sure that we invest in our infrastructure, because that is key. Small businesses. I look at our small business community. So Clinton obviously has a small, vibrant downtown, and I know that if I lose my main street now, I just become another exit off 78. So it's doing all we can to help those small businesses continue to grow, because by them growing, it builds our economy, it creates jobs. So anything focused around jobs in the economy, I think, is primary. I think there's a lot of other things that need to be done as well, but knowing that we're putting our residents back to work, and then also making sure they have the resources they need until they get back to work, is one of the most important things I think we can focus on.
And I'll just ask one final question here. So Congress is really not, hasn't been playing nice. And Washington, D.C. has not been playing nice, let's put it that way. So how do you envision yourself working with that environment to help to repair those broken bridges?
So, I use the town of Clinton as an example all the time. I am a Democrat. I have an all-Republican council. And I have probably one of the best councils in this county. I could, or even in the state, I couldn't ask for a better group of individuals to work with. And I say that because we put aside our party politics to do the right thing. I have to believe that there are more people like me. And quite frankly, I think if there are more women at the table, then we wind up having different conversations. There's a willingness to talk through. So use the example when government shut down, we just had the anniversary, October 1st. The only reason government reopened was because a group of bipartisan women sat down to write the framework to reopen government. They didn't take the credit or anything along those lines. I mean, I will give credit where credit is due. Senator McCain came out and told everyone that, listen, the only reason we opened government is because those women sat at the table. So I think that's what needs to happen. And I think if you send a few more women down, you know, listen, I joke about knocking the guys. I don't think it's supposed to be about all women or all men. I think there needs to be a balance. And I want to talk about issues that are important. You know, and I don't know, I think you may even have one of the bracelets, but when I ran for mayor, I had bracelets made. I had them made in hot pink because I didn't want the guys to wear them. It says, I want a seat at the table because I know if I'm not at the table, I'm on the menu. And too many of our issues are on the menu. You know, and I think in Washington, if we can start those conversations, and listen, you know I have a big mouth. I'm not taking no for an answer. I will work with both sides to get the work done that needs to be done, and really, and if it needs to be that I have to guilt them into it to do the right thing, I will do whatever it takes to do the right thing.
Janice, I have no doubt that you will do that. So we unfortunately are out of time, but I just want to thank you again for a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being my guest this week.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
And best of luck in your campaign, and we'll be crossing our fingers for the outcome in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that's our show for this week. Please join us next week when I'll be the host, and my guest will be Judith Glazer. Judith is a fascinating woman who's written a book called Conversational Intelligence. So please join us for that one. So until then, have just a fabulous week. Thanks.